Rum is the most misunderstood spirit on the planet. Scotch has age statements you can trust. Bourbon has strict federal regulations. Rum has no universal rules, no global standard, and no requirement to tell you what is actually in the bottle. One producer can dump 40 grams of added sugar per litre and still call it premium aged rum. That is why so many drinkers get stuck at level 1 and never realize what they are missing. This is every level of rum, from the bottle you mix with cola to the bottles collectors fight over at auction. Level 1, the party pour. This is where almost everyone starts, and there is no shame in it. Bacardi Superior, Captain Morgan Original, Havana Club, 3 year. These are the rums that sell hundreds of millions of bottles every year, and they exist for one reason: cocktails. Nobody is pouring Bacardi Superior into a glass and sipping it slowly. That is not what it was designed for. It was designed to disappear into a daiquiri or a mojito and let the other ingredients do the talking. Bacardi alone moves close to 200 million litres annually, making it the second best-selling rum brand on Earth, behind the Philippines' Tanduay. And the recipe has barely changed since Don Facundo Bacardi Masso figured out how to use charcoal filtration to produce a clean, light white rum back in Santiago de Cuba in 1862. Before that, rum was rough, it was dark, heavy, and it burned going down. The pirates and British sailors who drank it were not doing it for the flavour. They were doing it because water on ships went rancid, and rum preserved better. Bacardi changed the entire trajectory of the spirit by proving that rum could be clean, light, and civilized enough for mixed drinks. Havana Club 3 year from Cuba does the same thing in a slightly different way, with a little more body and a touch of honey sweetness that makes it arguably the better cocktail base. Captain Morgan Original Spice technically straddles this level and the next, but it sits here because for millions of drinkers, it is the first bottle of rum they ever buy. At this level, you are not tasting the rum, you are tasting the cocktail. The rum is just the engine, and for that purpose, these bottles do exactly what they need to do. The problem is when people stay here and assume this is all rum has to offer. It is like eating only instant noodles and deciding you do not like food. Level 2, the spiced detour, Kraken Black Spiced, Sailor Jerry, the Captain Morgan private stock lineup. This is where rum puts on a costume and pretends to be something more exotic than it actually is. Spiced rums are flavored spirits: vanilla, cinnamon, clove, caramel, and sometimes artificial flavoring. The base rum underneath is usually young, inexpensive column still spirit that would be completely unremarkable on its own. Kraken leaned into this harder than anyone with the matte black bottle, the Sea Monster branding, and the 94 proof punch. It became a lifestyle brand more than a rum. Sailor Jerry did the same thing with the tattoo aesthetic and the slightly higher proof. And for a lot of drinkers, this is the level where rum gets interesting for the first time. It tastes sweet, it tastes warm, it tastes like something you can identify. Here is the catch. Spiced rum teaches your palate to expect sweetness and vanilla in every glass. When you eventually try a properly aged, unsweetened rum, your first reaction is usually that something is wrong. It tastes dry, it tastes different, it tastes like actual spirit instead of a flavored dessert. That transition trips people up, and a lot of drinkers bounce right back to level 2 because the jump to level 3 or 4 feels uncomfortable. If you enjoy spiced rum, there is nothing wrong with that. Just know that the flavoring is doing the heavy lifting, not the rum underneath. Level 3. The sugar trap. This is where things get controversial because this level is full of bottles that taste incredible and cost real money, but are not what they claim to be. Diplomatico Reserva Exclusiva is the poster child. It has won double gold at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition and sits on the top shelf of every liquor store with a $40 to $50 price tag. It tastes like liquid caramel, dark chocolate, and vanilla, smooth as anything. For years, people assumed that smoothness came from masterful aging and blending. Then the hydrometer tests came out. Independent testers in Scandinavia and across Europe started measuring the actual sugar content of commercial rums, and Diplomatico Reserva Exclusiva came back at roughly 40 grams of added sugar per litre. For context, a can of cola has about 35 grams per 330 millilitres. You are sipping a spirit with a sugar load that rivals a soft drink. Other examples include Don Papa from the Philippines, Bumbu, and Zacapa 23. Zacapa uses a Solera system that makes the age statement borderline meaningless because a Solera blends older rum with younger rum continuously. So while there may be a trace of 23-year-old liquid in the bottle, the average age of what you are drinking could be far less. These bottles are not bad tasting. They are genuinely delicious. The problem is transparency. When a producer dumps sugar, glycerin, or caramel into a bottle and markets it as a premium aged spirit, you are not tasting the distiller's skill, you are tasting the sweetener. The way people figured this out is fascinating. A Danish spirits enthusiast named Johnny Dreyer started using a simple hydrometer, the same tool winemakers use to measure the density of commercial rums. If a rum at 40% alcohol reads denser than it should on the hydrometer, that extra density is coming from dissolved sugar. The method is not laboratory-grade precise, but it exposed a pattern that the industry had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The results spread through online forums and blogs, and suddenly brands that had won international gold medals were being outed for sugar content that rivaled dessert wines. The European Union now caps sugar in anything labelled as rum at 20 grams per litre for import. That single regulation has quietly forced several major brands to reformulate their recipes for the European market, while the exact same label sells a sweeter version everywhere else. If that does not tell you everything about how this industry operates, nothing will. Level 4. The honest age. This is the level where rum starts to earn its seat at the table next to Scotch and bourbon, because at level 4, the liquid in the bottle speaks for itself. El Dorado from Guyana is one of the most important names at this level, and also one of the most requested bottles in the comments on this channel. Demerara Distillers. Limited operates the last remaining distillery in Guyana, the Diamond Distillery on the banks of the Demerara River. Inside that facility sit some of the oldest and most unique stills in the entire spirits world. The Port Morant double wooden pot still, the Versailles single wooden pot still, the Enmore wooden coffee still. These are heritage stills, some over 200 years old, relocated from plantations that closed across the country as the sugar industry consolidated through the 1800s and the 1900s. At its peak in 1870, Guyana had over 300 sugar estates, each with its own distillery. Today there is one, and it produces 24 different marc, each yielding a completely distinct distillate. The El Dorado 15-year-old is a blend of rums from several of those heritage stills, tropically aged in ex-bourbon casks just 350 miles from the equator, where the heat and humidity accelerate maturation dramatically. Now, El Dorado had a sugar problem of its own. Older batches of the 12-year-old and the 15-year-old tested at over 30 grams per litre. The brand claimed the sugar came from caramel-lined aging casks rather than post-distillation dosing, which raised plenty of eyebrows. Starting around 2020, new bottlings showed drastically reduced sugar. The 12-year-old dropped to roughly 6 grams per litre. The 15-year-old new bottling came in effectively clean. It was a major shift, and the reformulated versions are genuinely excellent. Alongside El Dorado, you have bottles like Appleton Estate 8-year-old from Jamaica, tropically aged in the limestone-rich Nassau Valley, where the estate has been distilling continuously since 1749. Dawley's 12-year-old from Barbados is made by Richard Seal at the Foursquare distillery and aged in a combination of ex-bourbon and ex-Madeira casks with 0 additives and a price tag that routinely makes seasoned whiskey drinkers question why they are spending 3 times as much on Scotch. And Mount Gay XO from the oldest documented rum distillery in the world, dating back to 1703, offers a refined, complex sip that holds its own against aged cognac. These are producers who age honestly, disclose what they do, and let the rum stand on its own merits. The difference between level 3 and level 4 is not price, it is honesty. And once you taste what rum is supposed to be without the makeup, going back to the sugar-loaded bottles feels impossible. Level 4 is where the real journey starts, and what comes next will change how you think about sugarcane entirely. Quick thing before we get to the top 3 on this list. The data on this channel shows that over 80% of you watching right now are not subscribed. That means you are showing up for the content, but the algorithm has no reason to show you the next video. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about what you are putting in your glass. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Level 5. The Cane Juice Awakening. Up until now, every rum on this list has been made from molasses. The thick, dark byproduct left over after sugar is extracted from sugarcane. Molasses-based rum is what most of the world thinks of when they think of rum. Rich, sweet, caramel, vanilla, tropical fruit. Level 5 flips all of that on its head. In Martinique, a French Caribbean island, rum is made from fresh pressed sugarcane juice instead of molasses. They call it rhum agricole, and it carries an AOC designation, the same type of protected status that covers champagne and cognac. Only distilleries operating within 23 approved municipalities on the island can produce it. The sugarcane must be locally grown. The distillation must happen within a specified time frame after harvest. Everything is regulated down to the soil. The result tastes nothing like what you expect from rum. Rum Clement is grassy, peppery, vegetal, with a sharpness that sits closer to a Highland tequila or an unpeated Scotch than a Jamaican pot still rum. It is a completely different experience, and the first sip of agricole is the moment a lot of drinkers realize that rum is not one category. It is an entire universe of regional styles pretending to share a name. Rum JM from the northern slopes of Mount Paley on the same island takes it even further, with a mineral intensity that reflects the volcanic soil the cane grows in. The terroir argument that winemakers have been making for centuries applies to agricole rum in a way it simply does not apply to molasses-based spirits. And then there is Brazil. Cachaça is another sugarcane juice spirit, but it has its own identity entirely separate from both molasses rum and agricole. Brazil produces close to 300 million litres of the stuff every year across more than 1,200 registered distilleries. The vast majority never leaves the country. Over a third of all cachaça sold is consumed within 100 kilometres of where it was made. It is one of the most hyper-local spirits on the planet. What makes cachaça unique is the aging. While Scotch and bourbon age in oak, artisanal Brazilian producers age their cachaça in native woods that exist nowhere else. Amburana wood gives it a warm, cinnamon-like spice. Jequitiba adds mineral, almost earthy tones. Tapinhoa introduces a subtle sweetness that has nothing to do with added sugar. A well-aged cachaça from a small Minas Gerais distillery is unlike anything else you will ever taste in the spirits world, and it usually costs a fraction of what comparable aged spirits go for internationally. If you drink nothing but molasses-based rum your entire life, you will enjoy yourself. But you will never understand what sugarcane is truly capable of until you try agricole and cachaça side by side. Level 6. The single still obsession. At this level, you are no longer just drinking rum, you are studying it. The bottles here come from distilleries that operate with total transparency, zero additives, and a near-religious commitment to the craft. Foursquare in Barbados is the standard bearer. Run by Richard Seal, a fourth-generation distiller whose family has been in the rum trade since 1926, Foursquare releases its exceptional cask selection series as one-off limited bottlings. Zero sugar, zero colouring, zero chill filtration. Each release is a specific blend of pot and column still rum, aged for a stated number of years in a combination of ex-bourbon and ex-sherry or ex-Madeira casks. Once a mark sells out, it is gone forever. You cannot buy the same bottle twice. Seal has won Rum Producer of the Year at the International Wine and Spirit Competition 5 times, and the distillery was named Outstanding Spirits Producer of the Year in 2021. The sugar estate itself dates to approximately 1720, though the modern distillery was reopened by Seal in 1996. Every bottle carries the exact blend composition, the exact age, and the exact cask types on the label. Nothing is hidden. Then there is Hampton Estate in Jamaica. If Foursquare is the polished architect, Hampton is the mad scientist. Jamaican rum is famous for its high ester counts, those intense, funky, fruity flavor compounds that come from long fermentation times and traditional pot still distillation. Hampton pushes this further than almost anyone. Their distillates can hit ester levels that would be considered faults in other spirits. But in Jamaican rum, that intensity is the entire point. Tasting notes for Hampton include overripe banana, glue, rotting fruit, and petrol. And somehow, impossibly, all of those things together taste extraordinary. The 8 Marks collection lets you taste different ester profiles side by side and understand exactly how fermentation shapes flavor. It is like being handed a cheat sheet for how rum actually works at a molecular level. Worthy Park, also in Jamaica, operates on a similar philosophy. Single estate, single distillery, fully traceable from the cane in the field to the bottle in your hand. You know what you are drinking and where it comes from. At level 6, price ranges run anywhere from $60 to $150, and the experience is closer to single malt Scotch territory than anything you would recognize from levels 1 to 3. Level 7, the collector's dream. This is the end of the road. The bottles here are not just rare, some of them are from distilleries that no longer exist. Caroni was a distillery in Trinidad that closed in 2002 when the government shut down the state-run sugar company. The stills went quiet, the warehouses sat full of aging rum, and the story would have ended there if Luca Gargano, the Italian spirits importer behind Velier, had not travelled to Trinidad and discovered thousands of barrels still maturing on site. He began bottling them as single cask releases, each one from a specific year, a specific still, a specific warehouse. The rum world lost its mind. Caroni had a flavour profile unlike anything else in the Caribbean. Heavy, industrial, smoky, with notes of tar, asphalt and burnt rubber alongside tropical fruit and deep oak. It was divisive and it was extraordinary. Some people taste it and think something has gone wrong. Others taste it and realize they have found their holy grail. There is very little middle ground with Caroni. Today, certain Velier Caroni bottlings trade at auction for thousands of dollars. A single bottle from a prized vintage can fetch anywhere from $500 to over $5,000 depending on the year and the cask. The supply is finite and shrinking with every bottle that gets opened. When the last cask is emptied, that is it. There is no distillery to restart. There is no recipe to follow. The stills were dismantled. The land was repurposed. Caroni exists only in whatever barrels remain, and the clock is ticking on every single one of them. That is the reality of level 7. You are not buying a drink. You are buying a piece of distillation history from a place that will never produce another drop. Appleton Estate has released its Hearts collection in a similar vein, pulling ancient casks from their warehouses in the Nassau Valley in Jamaica. El Dorado has offered rare vintage bottlings blended from its heritage stills that are older than most countries. The Royal Navy's daily rum ration, which was blended largely from Demerara rum from Guyana, ended in 1970. The last remaining stocks of that original Navy rum, known as Black Tot, were bottled and sold as collector's items. The final pour from the last barrel of official Royal Navy rum is the kind of thing that makes grown adults weep at spirits auctions. At this level, every bottle is a time capsule. Once it is opened, it is gone. So which level are you at right now? And more importantly, which one are you heading to next? drop it in the comments. If there is a specific bottle or category you want covered in a future video, let me know. I appreciate you watching to the end. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one.